Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. I have forgot to press the countdown button, so this is a new one.
That threw me so much.
It threw me as well. Not press the right button, but welcome along. We're going to do it without the intro music this time, which has changed a lot. I was getting feedback in my ear then, and I wondered why, and it's because the live stream was actually in a link and was pumping my voice into my ears as I was speaking. So this has been a calamitous start, Adam, to the live stream. When I'm on the radio and stuff like this happens, we say, well, this is what live radio is like sometimes. So here we go. We are going to be doing a mock draft in a little while, which is what I think is a realistic mock draft, Adam, which is something that I don't think we've seen many of those recently. I think we see a lot of things where the Seahawks are taking a receiver at number 18. I don't think those are realistic mock drafts. So I'm going to do a realistic mock draft in a little while. But before we get into that, we are a month away from the draft. Free agency is pretty much dead at this point. We're now at the stage, Adam, where there are a few players left, and they may well think I'll wait till after the draft and see what my options are then, rather than signing for a very small amount now. How would you assess where the roster is for Seattle at the moment?
I think we're in one of those tricky periods where I think I said this last week, whatever you want to think about the roster, probably whatever you wanted to think going into free agency, even if you brought all of your priors in with you, you could probably find a way to confirm those one way or the other. I think we're in a position where I've seen a few people on Twitter say, if we just go and get this, previously 96th ranked guard, then every hole on the roster has been filled before the draft. And that isn't a false thing to say. But I do feel at times that Seahawk fans, or fans of any team in general, let's be honest, because we all want to believe the best about our own team. But I do feel that sometimes it's like insert human here, that hole in inverted commas is plugged. Like someone could say, if we just sign Adam Nathan as a tight end, well, that hole is plugged. So we've got a tight end now. And that's where it leaves me a little bit cold with it all. I saw someone, I think it was Dan Veens, who I love all of his content. He was saying that he was quite vehemently disagreeing with Ben Solak's assertion that the Seahawks has taken a step back. And I responded saying, I don't know how you can sort of have a strong opinion on it either way yet, because you could look at this free agency and say, well, they've got rid of high contracts that they didn't need. And they've replaced them with, really good high character guys, and, Cooper Kupp and Tank Lawrence, and listen to all these fancy names. Sam Darnold, what a season he had. But I think, someone on the negative side of things could say, well, they've got rid of a blue chip player, the quarterback, and they filled it with three guys that may not even be on the roster next season. So I find it really tricky. I do feel that sometimes an enormous benefit of the doubt is given to John Schneider. Now, I'm probably coming from a position where I don't want to give him that, but you'll know Paul Merson, and half the people watching may know who Paul Merson is. And he had a really good thing about a soccer team, but 5 or 6 years ago, who the manager could talk an unbelievable game, and then he'd send his team out and they were terrible. And he said, you watch them and you think they're bad, and then they start talking, and it's like someone from Men in Black comes with that pen and says, bang. And you're like, oh, actually, that wasn't so bad. And I do feel that sometimes that's what living in Seahawk off-season world is, that you watch the season happen and it's really frustrating. And we have all these complaints, and, the offensive line's terrible. There's not enough talent. And then we get into free agency, and for my money, they've not done that much. And yet I still see people really optimistic about what's going on. Fine. I don't see it that way at this stage, but sorry, that's an enormously long opening comment there. But that's kind of where I am right now. That I just feel that there's a lot of optimism that's being placed into it, which is fine, but I don't quite see why they either deserve the benefit of the doubt or why it's quite there yet.
Interesting thoughts. And I think for me, it's not so much optimism, but intrigue. That's how I would describe it. I am very intrigued by what has happened. I agree with a lot of the moves that they have done. I can make sense of their decisions. I think this is sometimes part of the problem with an off season. you go into it with a certain level of expectation. And for Seahawks fans, it was fix the offensive line. Not only have they not addressed the offensive line, but then they've made so many other moves, changing quarterback, trading DK Metcalf, even things like signing Cooper Kupp. There are lots of things for people to have big opinions on. And there were a section of fans who thought that the Seahawks were kind of on the right path and all they needed to do was get an offensive line. And they've gone above and beyond that. I mean, you mentioned Ben Solak. I suspect the reason that he's speaking the way he is, and this is no disrespect to him or to anybody else, although he did say a year ago that Michael Penix Jr. doesn't have a very strong arm, was that they were very, very much in the I'm going to go and bat for Geno Smith camp. And Geno Smith being traded, it didn't matter. The Seahawks could have probably signed Trey Smith in free agency and pick somebody else, of that kind of nature. And he would have said, I'm still confused by what they're doing because they've moved on from Geno Smith and swapped him for Sam Darnold. So I think there's going to be a bit of that. With John Schneider, I don't know if it's so much giving him the benefit of the doubt as it is. I feel like I think it's understandable what has happened in this free agency, whereby they've looked at the free agent options on the offensive line. They've identified the one player who was at a good age, who's got an upward trajectory for his career in Will Fries. They've targeted him. Minnesota went above and beyond to sign him. I don't have a problem with the Seahawks not out-dueling Minnesota in that regard. I think Drew Dahlman, as I've said before, had his heart set on Chicago. And I think in that situation, the worst thing they could have done, and this is something that John Schneider made a point of saying, was sign average players. And they don't want to be an average team. And I don't want them to sign average to bad offensive linemen just to say they've done it to get kudos on social media. So I'm content with where they are. Adam, I am convinced they are going to be able to find some solutions in this offensive line draft. If I'm wrong, I'll hold my hands up. And if we're here in a year's time and we're saying the same things, then it's without a shadow of a doubt, John Schneider will be under a lot of pressure if the offensive line is terrible again next year. But I do think in this class, there are players who fit the system the Seahawks want to do. So for that reason, I'm intrigued. I'm prepared to see what happens in the draft. I think people will probably be pleasantly surprised by what happens in this draft, Adam. And you know what? By doing this mock draft, it might just help people a little bit because I don't think people realize how great it is to have 5 picks in the top 92 in this draft class. And although it might take people like me who are sadaks about the draft to sort of know everything about these players in order to feel as optimistic as I probably would be when I see a collection of 5 names that they could get early on, I think perhaps with hindsight, people will go, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I understand the thought process there, but maybe not, because one of the things that I'm going to project in this mock draft, Adam, is the Seahawks taking another lineman from the University of Connecticut. And that didn't work out a year ago. So I guess we'll see, won't we? But I think the jury's out on John Schneider, but I am intrigued by what he's done.
I did see one person on Twitter today take a mock draft of entirely guards. It was 10 guard picks. Thought experiment. If they did that, where do you reckon the other holes in the roster are? Because I kind of feel if they did that and 2 of them hit, let's say, and they had 2 good guards, I'd be quite optimistic about the season, I think.
Well, I think if you take 10 guards, at least you've given yourself a good chance of finding one who might work out. Also,
imagine how funny it would be when they get to like pick 6 and it's another guard. And then we're all waiting and like, here comes the 7th. They can't. They've done it again. And it would be so funny.
It would be amusing. I think they're not telegraphing anything because you don't know what order they're going to go in or what players they might want. But I think the fact that they haven't replaced Rayshon Jenkins, they haven't replaced Roy Robertson Harris, players like that, they haven't replaced Trey Brown. I know they've signed players, but I still think there's more to do. They can sign them they can replace them with better players in the draft. I think he's somewhat, Laken Tomlinson's another one, obviously. I think they are going to replace those positions in the draft. So I think we are going to look at, they will draft a safety, they will draft a cornerback, they will draft a defensive tackle at some point. I think they probably will be interested in drafting an edge rusher if one's available that they like. I don't think it's an absolute must do, seeing as they have signed DeMarcus Lawrence and are bringing back Uchenna and Wosu. Even if he's not healthy for week 1, he's there. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, let's do the mock, Adam. I know that I'm going to try not to speak for too long in this mock, because I know what happens when I do these, and I just start waffling on. So if you want, I will sort of discuss players as we go along in relation to the Seahawks and get your thoughts on them, if that's okay. But I will get someone has sent me a message in saying, "Is that a new era hat?" Yes, it is. It's a new era hat. I got it outside Lumenfield, if you're wondering. What's your hat, Adam? Is that a Seahawks hat?
I am a hat rookie on this podcast, and I realized it was a problem when the first super chat came in saying my cheeks are so rosy. I think I've got mad cap shadow, but it's one of the throwback caps that was in the store. Cap. It's a great hat. I'm really thrilled with it.
Did you get that when you went recently then?
I did. I'm going to risk my mad hat hair. It's been on all day, and
that is an awesome hat.
Yeah.
Is that a disco ball or is it a globe?
Is it what the Kingdom used to look like, or something on those lines?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Oh, that's amazing. That I wish I'd seen. They sold out of those when I was last there.
I got to be honest, and Dave Sayers probably watching this. This is a mad tangent from what we were talking about, but I was there for the Broncos game, and we threw on a good day. It has to be said. We made a good day of it, and this cat actually got left behind in an Uber back to where I was staying, and I was desperately trying to get in touch with the driver to get it back, and no dice. So I actually bought it again because I liked it so much. So this is throwback hat 2.0, but worth every penny if you ask me.
I mean, I like a hat, as people who follow this channel probably know. If I'd have seen that hat in the store, I'd have probably bought 2. One so when it gets ruined, I could replace it.
Yeah.
So definitely. There we go. And I try not to leave it in an Uber, but
I didn't. I wasn't able to try anything the state I was in, unfortunately. But what can you say?
We have got some super chats. Get those in. I'm going to come to the super chats after we've got into this mock. So I know people are waiting for it. So let's bring it up. I am going to use the Pro Football Network mock draft simulator. So what it's going to be is I'm going to do every pick for 2 rounds, and like I say, I will stop at certain points and say to Adam, "Hey, thoughts on this guy?" and then and or this position as we go along. So this is what I would call a realistic 2-round mock draft based on what we know, and also a realistic one for the Seahawks. So I don't think this is the best thing for the Titans to do, but they seem like they're going to do it and draft yet another young quarterback. Maybe they should stop drafting young quarterbacks and actually think about building a good roster. But there you go. So Cam Ward at number 1. At number 2...
Can I chip in straight away, Rob? Sorry, because I'm not going to have a lot to say about a lot of these picks. But
jump in.
The Cam Ward one.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about it that I just feel like the offseason is so long, and you get so many tropes and narratives that form. And I know people were talking about him at the end of the college season, but it just feels like he's been elevated almost out of boredom to this pick. And if I was the Titans, I would just think we could do this, and we might set our ceiling at 8, 9, 10 wins. But what's really the point? I mean, this guy just feels like a kind of Malik Willis. He's a better player than that, but just like if Malik Willis was just thrusted to number 1 overall pick, and maybe I'm way off, and the amount you've forgotten about the draft this morning is more than I'll ever know, but I just don't see it.
He's a player that a year ago did not even get invited to the Senior Bowl, who had a late round grade. He's gone to Miami. He's played in the ACC. It's an easy conference to play in. He has had a lot of success and played very well and rightly elevated his stock. But first overall it's incredible for me. I've got him graded in round 2. I don't understand the thought process here. If he goes on and plays unbelievably, congratulations to him. I don't think he will. They don't have any weapons in Tennessee that are worth having. I think we've seen 2 other young quarterbacks go into that franchise and fail. If I was them, I'd be taking a step back, playing a long game. I'd take Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter first overall. And if you really have to take a quarterback, take one in round 3 and just go that way. I wouldn't be doing this, but it seems as if they are either that or they're just playing a fantastic misdirection to try and coax the Giants or somebody else to trade up. And if they are, hats off to them. There's another hat reference. Anyway, number 2, there's been a bit of talk that Shador would go here, but then it's kind of flipped again. And now Abdul Carter is the betting favorite to go second overall. And I'm going to pay attention to that. And I think that what will happen is the Browns, as we will come to discover later on in this mock, will move up and get back into the first round for a quarterback. So I've got them taking Abdul Carter. And listen, how do the Browns win football games this year? If you can put Myles Garrett on one end and Abdul Carter on the other, that seems pretty good to me. I don't know what the Giants are going to do, but the GM and the head coach seem to have forced themselves into a corner whereby if they don't take a quarterback, they're going to get fired. And if they do take one and he fails, they're going to get fired. The chances are in a year, they may well get fired. And then the next bunch will have to deal with the mess that they've left. So good luck to any Giants fan who has sneaked in and is listening to this, is all I've got to say. I don't think Shador Sanders is worth the top 3 pick either. But there we go, Adam. The quarterbacks are getting pushed up.
Do you think they are more likely to keep their job for an extra year by taking a quarterback who doesn't necessarily work out because they could pitch the idea that he needs more time than if they missed on one who went on to be like another Jaden Daniels? Not that they missed on him, but if that scenario arose.
I think there's a possibility of that because the owner, John Mara, has said he doesn't want to get into that hiring and firing cycle. He's actually lectured other owners about doing that and thinks that you need to be giving people time. So he's given them a lot of time, but this has been an error-strewn reign from Joe Sheen. So I don't know whether he's going to be able to rectify this in a year. The Giants just seem like one of those franchises. They've got the wheels spinning in the mud. And I think it depends how bad it is. You know, if they get to 7 wins, maybe they carry on. If it's picking top 5 again, I think maybe they could be fired. But either way, I'd hate to be a Giants fan right now. It just doesn't seem like much fun. Right. Patriots at 4. I think they love an alignment, a defensive or offensive lineman to be the best player here, but it's not. There are basically 3 proper, legit blue chippers in this draft. One's Ashton Genty. For positional value, he's not going to go this high. The other's Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. So I'm going to have the Patriots taking Travis Hunter here and using him as mainly a receiver rather than a quarterback in New England. And that's kind of what I think is probably best for him, to be honest. I've always felt, Adam, that he's a decent corner and a good receiver. I don't know why people are rushing to convert him to a corner, personally. But there we go.
If they viewed Tyler Warren as someone that had like Brock Bowers capacity, how much thought do you reckon they'd give, to pair a young quarterback with a player like Warren?
I think I've mocked it a few times. I think they definitely would. I think it's just a case of they are a team that is building and they have to go by the grades. And I think Carter and Hunter are going to come off the board quickly as a consequence of being miles ahead of everybody else in terms of grading, really. And for that reason, I could see them taking Hunter. But Warren is going to go early. And as we speak about Tyler Warren, he's going to be the next pick to Jacksonville. He's going to go there. I think they've got a young GM, an offensive-minded head coach. Trevor Lawrence has just got one weapon, really, Brian Thomas Jr. I think they've got rid of Evan Engram. I think they're going to bring in Tyler Warren. I think everybody in the New York Jets organization is going to have their head in their hands because I think they really want him to fall to number 7. And they know if he gets past 4 or 5, he ain't going to go to Brock Bowers to play second fiddle to Brock Bowers. So they're going to get him at 7. And I think the Jags will take him off the board here. He's a really good player, Adam. I had a Twitter account with 0 followers and he follows 2 people messaged me this week saying he's hearing that the Seahawks want to trade up for Tyler Warren. And it's obviously a brilliant source. So I'm completely bought into the fact that
was that the Brian?
Yes, that was the Brian.
Excellent.
Yeah. They're not going to trade up this. I mean, I think he was banking on Tyler Warren falling out the top 10, and there is no chance of that happening, I'm afraid. Right, Vegas. A lot of people are saying Ashton Genty. People who know the GM in Vegas, the new GM, said he won't do that. And Pete Carroll might want it, and Pete Carroll might be able to convince him to do it. But the talk is that the GM will probably make them wait on a running back, especially in a deep running back class. So I'm going to put Arman Membu here. They do not have an amazing right tackle. Membu would be ideal for a team like the Seahawks, want to run outside zone. You can play guard or tackle. I'm going to put him at right tackle with the Raiders here. And Ashton Genty will stay on the board. So there we go.
Just to back that up, like of the few good contacts I have in Seattle, one of them was quite keen to stress that he thought that the Pete Carroll running back narrative was slightly overblown, and it wasn't just a one-man crusade that was taking all the running backs in these positions, and it was very much an organizational thing as much as anything else. So this idea that Pete Carroll and Ashton Genty, look, it might happen. You never know how the draft is going to open up or fall for players. But he suggested that was I don't want to say lazy journalism or lazy narrative, but that's probably the best way to put it, I would say, from what he was suggesting.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make. And if that's paired with the fact that the GM is probably going to say no to it, makes me think that Genty will just stay a bit longer. And I think Genty's pound for pound the best player in the draft. So that's a reason for taking him this early. I don't know if the Raiders will do it, and I think they might take a lineman instead. So what are the Jets going to do? Because I think they would have loved Warren and they'd have loved Membu, and both have gone. Well, I'm telling you what I think they're going to do. I think they're going to take Colston Loveland. And they want a weapon at this position. They want somebody who can be an X factor there. I think half the internet is sleeping on this guy and doesn't realize how highly rated he has always been. And every now and again, there's a little nugget from somebody in draft media going, hey, just watch out for Colston Loveland. You don't realize how early he's going to go. Well, he is one of a handful, and it is a real handful of players who are considered legit first round. You take them in the first round any year players. And if Warren goes early, Loveland could go here. And if he doesn't go here, I think the floor, the absolute max floor for Colston Loveland is 14 to the Colts. I think the Cowboys possibly would take him at 12 instead of going with a receiver. And I think the Panthers might consider him. The Bears might consider him. He's going to go very early. And Adam, people keep telling me, you're not going to see two tight ends go early. It never happens. Yeah, but I always say to people that when they say that is, well, show me the last draft that had a class like this that is identical to this with two tight ends of this quality. You can't compare what happened in 2003 to what happens in this draft. This is a class with a very low number of legit first-round players. Loveland and Warren are two of them. And teams are not going to bypass these players. So even if Loveland doesn't go to 7, he will go very early. He is not going to last to number 18. You can record this if you want and play it back to me and laugh at me when it happens. But he is not, in my opinion, going to last to 18 like some people have been suggesting or beyond. He's too good at it. He's going to go in the very early.
Yeah, and in the absence of real quality, if you were playing Madden or whatever with Justin Fields as your quarterback, and you probably didn't have to worry about his body for too long a term because you don't imagine he's going to be there for that long. Having a tight end that can crash off the edge inside and open up all those running lanes for your quarterback on the outside, that just seems like a sensible way to do it, unless there's a guy that's so obviously a better player, someone that could open up your offense to that extent. That seems quite sensible.
Well, the two names that get mentioned with these two players are pretty good players. Like Warren gets compared to Gronk, not as a blocker, but as a pass catcher. And Loveland gets compared to Kelsey. Now, he's a different type of body shape to Kelsey, but that ability to be a number one target at tight end is what Colston Loveland is. And again, I can only say it a couple of times and before I have to move on, because the league thinks of him thinks of him very highly of Colston Loveland. It just does. And if you don't believe me, Lance Zierlein has him I think the 6th or 7th highest graded player in the draft. That's what the league thinks. And with the Jets in particular, they want a tight end who can do what Warren and Loveland can do. And here's another point I'll make before we finally move on, because I don't want to spend forever talking about Colston Loveland. Some teams will have Loveland ahead of Warren. I promise you that on the board. They will. He's that good. Right, Panthers. Let's run through a few of these picks because we've not even got out to number 8 yet. I am going to have the Panthers take Jalen Walker. Their defense is pretty poor, and this would be an opportunity to upgrade their he can maybe play as a poor man's Micah Parsons off the edge. But great character, and teams will like him for that. Saints at number 9, I've got Mason Graham. Now, Mason Graham's tape is top 5 worthy. But the body type, the body shape, the lack of testing, the fact that he was lighter than expected at the combine, I've had to keep him on the board a little bit here, Adam, and at number 9. But I think what the Saints will do is they'll just let the board come to them, and they're not going to force anything here. And I think some of the players that have gone, just if it was a Membu, if it was one of the tight ends, if it was Walker, I think they'd take them. In this instance, it's Graham who's fallen. They will take him. And a lot of people think he's a legit first-round talent. So not surprised that the Saints would take him there.
You've got two teams there in the Panthers and the Saints that, any position you could quite imagine them thinking, let's take someone there because we can upgrade almost anywhere. Do you think that might be a position that someone could be looking to trade up into to try and get their guy? Like, we know what the Bears have done with their offensive line in the offseason so far. Could they be thinking, right now we're going to go and, just in case the Panthers, who could take anyone, take our guy, is any chance of movement in that scenario?
I think this draft, it'll be really hard for trades because I think teams are just going to value so much those day 2 picks. They're not going to want to give them away. Like even a 3rd rounder in this draft is going to be so valuable to teams. So I don't think they're going to be rushing to part with those picks. And the other problem that you have is the quarterbacks. You're not going to fear teams like the Bears, the Niners, the Cowboys, the Dolphins, the Colts, Falcons for quarterbacks. So no one's going to want to get ahead. They might want to get ahead of the Saints if they think, we love Jackson Dart and we can't live without him. I just don't know, one, whether teams are going to feel that strongly about Jackson Dart, or 2, whether they legitimately fear that he's going to go in the top 10. And he might do. Look, there's a bit of buzz there, like, hey, maybe the Jets will take him, or maybe, like Mel Kiper said, the Saints will take him this year. Maybe it happens. We saw it last year. Quarterbacks suddenly start 6 in the top 12, and 3 of them nobody expected to go that far in January last year, and they did. So it can happen. I'm not sure that it will happen in this instance. So we get to the Bears at 10. This is where Genty comes off the board. They will be dancing round the draft room if Ashton Genty falls to number 10, and they will not hesitate to make that pick. Right, the beloved San Francisco 49ers. I've got a feeling they're going to want some speed at the back end. And because some of the better, that Jalen Walker's gone, Mason Graham's gone, I'm going to give them Jahdae Barron here, who I think teams are going to love with his character, his ferocious tackling at his size. He ran in the 4.3s, 4.39, I think he ran at the combine. He's going to be a very coveted player. And then the Cowboys, Adam. I don't understand what the Cowboys are doing this offseason. I've got no idea. It makes their free agency moves make no sense. With the greatest respect to Brian Schottenheimer, I don't think anybody anticipated that he was going to be an NFL head coach this season. He is. Good luck to the man. I like him, but I don't think I expect he's going to be there very long, apart from a huge surprise. And they seem hell bent on taking a receiver at 12. They see all of their moves seem to be sort of shaping towards this. They're going to take the best receiver on the board at 12. That is Matthew Golden, who emerged with Texas this year. I just don't understand the Cowboys. I don't know whether Jerry Jones is turning into Al Davis before he, the later days of Al Davis with the Raiders. I suspect that's probably what it is, actually, Adam.
I'd almost forgotten they existed.
Yeah.
There's been such a nondescript offseason for them. Like, there's not been no splashes, no stories. I mean, the most important thing that's happened to them in terms of getting any traction is one player and one former player beefing on Twitter about one winning a Super Bowl and one tweeting too much. If I had to list all the teams in the NFL last week, I probably would have had the Cowboys 26th, 27th in terms of remembering their existence, because it just seems that they've just done nothing.
Yeah. I don't know what they're doing. And wait till you see the second pick in round 2.
I'm waiting with bated breath.
Oh, it's a doozy. Right, on to 13. I just have this. I had this feeling about 10 days ago that Malachi Starks' stock was going to recover, because people was like putting him, and I was doing it as well, bottom of the first and stuff like that. And then I did a bit of digging. I told a really good story about him on Bump and Stacy this week. If anyone saw that on Seattle Sports, the video is on YouTube. And teams love his interviewing. They love his personality. I think his slightly weird 2024 season has been like countered twice almost. He is a good player. He's an excellent deep safety. He's not as versatile as other players, but he's a very talented deep safety. He can run and hit. He makes plays from deep, which is a rare thing. I think given the Dolphins' need at safety and the fact that I think teams will like him, I've just got a feeling that he's going to go 13 here. Adam, if he's there at 18, he could be an option for the Seahawks. How would you feel if the Seahawks took a safety at 18?
I would have to come on this stream and make you give the greatest explanation of your life about how that positional value is better than taking a guard or center who is 15% a weaker player. So that would be my gauntlet and challenge to you. I'll happily listen to it. But I reckon I take some convincing, and having navigated the storms of Adams and Diggs, of all of that capital invested into two players, albeit there was draft, of course, with Adams, with the picks. I don't know, man. I think that'd be a tough sell in a school debating competition. Good pick, bad pick. I wouldn't want to be on the side of the good pick, I don't think, when it comes to that.
I think the way I would justify it at the time is probably what I would say now. I think there is a chance that in the NFL grading world, 8 is the perfect player. You get very few players who are a 7. Most of your players are graded between like the 5.9s to the 6.3s. And the players who the Seahawks are going to end up picking in 18 are probably going to be about 6.35. Probably about that range in grading. Malachi Starks could be a 6.50. And if you get a player that is that far ahead of everybody else, you sometimes have to go, we have to take him. He's that good. And that would be the justification for it. He is a quality person, player. I saw a comment that said he didn't test very well. His 40 is exactly the same time as Jesse Bates, 4.50, who's one of the best safeties in the league. Now, is Jesse Bates a difference maker? No, I don't think he is. I think Malachi Starks has the potential to be a slightly better player, but I think that Starks is of a high standard and may just be so highly graded at 18 that they have to take him. But in this instance, he's gone. He's gone to 13. So the debates will not be needed if this happens in real life as to whether or not it was good value or not. Right, number 14, and the Colts. This is a pick that I wanted to spend a bit of time on because I've given them Jihad Campbell. They've really improved their secondary. They are going to bump, I think, Galvez, who they took last year and loved. So they took him last year over to right guard to replace Will Fries. So I don't think offensive line is a massive need for them here. They've lost the linebackers, but they weren't very good anyway. The labrum surgery, Adam, is the only thing stopping me putting Jihad Campbell in the top 10. He is an unbelievable player. He's one of the 10 best players in this draft. He hits and leaves a bruise. Like, he is unbelievably talented. And not only that, he can rush the edge. Now, I was listening to a bit of a stream between Brian Nemhauser on Hortblogger and Jeff Simmons yesterday. And they were discussing that I'd done a mock draft with them both last week. And that in this mock, I mean, it's thrown together. We come on one of these simulators and we just see who's there. And that I picked Jihad Campbell, and they both said that they didn't understand that pick. If the Seahawks have a chance to draft Jihad Campbell, and this without the labrum surgery, they shouldn't sprint to the podium. They should be jetpacking their way to the podium. You cannot not take this player because of Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight. You have to take him because he's the kind of player who over 10 years could be a Fred Warner. He could be a Fred Warner. And the other aspect of it is that he's not just a middle linebacker. He's an edge rusher as well. He was recruited as an edge rusher and can do that kind of a role. He could be a more effective Jalen Walker than Jalen Walker is. You could be reducing him down, rushing the passer, he might have a better chance of being Micah Parsons than Jalen Walker. And who wouldn't want that? So I think the idea of having Tyrese Knight as a backup and having Jihad Campbell, who is, I think he's a rare talent. And if it wasn't for that labrum question mark, he'd be going to the Saints in this mock draft, at least. Maybe even higher than that, Adam. He's an unbelievable player. So I have to push back on Brian and Jeff saying that they thought it was not a pick to make. I think if it wasn't for that shoulder issue, if he was there at 18, it'd be an absolute no-brainer for me, Adam. He's just too good. He's too good.
For the uninitiated, like myself, on stuff like this, when you've got a defensive-minded head coach who, you hope can elevate players, has such a rock-solid scheme, is a player like Campbell, would you imagine he would see him as an asset within his scheme? Or, because I remember with Pete Carroll, there were a number of players like Sheldon Richardson, Jadeveon Clowney, to a point where you thought, oh my God, they've given this player to this coach. And it actually almost ended up being counterproductive. And we ended the season thinking, why didn't we see the best out of these players? And maybe it wasn't the right fit. From a Campbell standpoint, do you see it as being that way? Or no, this is a serious guy to pair with a heck of a coach and a system?
I think he could be the thing that makes Seattle's defense the best in the NFL. He's just unbelievable. Like, the more you watch of him, the more you're wowed by him. And I think it's more than just his ability to play conventional linebacker and then reduce down pass rush. As I said, it's the hitting, it's that violence, it's that no one's going to want to play with him in your lineup. He can cover, he can drop. He's superbly athletic. He's the kind of player that in 3 or 4 years' time, and it might not happen, and it might not happen for reasons that are nothing to do with football. It could be injuries. Maybe the labrum's a problem. I don't have a medical breakdown here and a doctor telling me whether you've got to take this guy off your board. That might be the case, and he might end up going in the late first as a consequence. He may never be healthy. That's the unfortunate aspect of the NFL. Give him a complete, clean bill of health. Take away the shoulder issues. I had him as the 6th best player in this draft. Like, he was just wow. Like, I think an incredible talent, and we would see. We would see what would happen if he was there at 18. I think the Seahawks would probably take him and just think nothing of it. But he's not. He's going to go to 14 here, and whether the Colts redshirt him or whatever, they have kind of done that with picks. They take these players with the intention of resting them, and then they play him in Anthony Richardson. Latu was, they didn't really throw him in at the deep end last year, so maybe they would do that. Maybe they need a more impactful player because of the pressure on the coach and the GM. I don't know, but he's too good to last much longer. And if I didn't put him with the Colts, I'd have put him with the Falcons. But I definitely think if he gets a clearance on the shoulder, he could be an option for the Seahawks. So Falcons, they need pass rush. I don't know what to make of Michael Williams. He's not very consistent, but when he plays, he flashes. He's had injuries, loads of injuries that have stopped him playing a full season. His body type is not that impressive. He's well proportioned, but it doesn't have a big upper body. It's kind of his frame is not prototypical. I don't really know what to make of him. So I'm going to give him to 15 to the Falcons. It wouldn't surprise me if he goes late first, frankly. I just don't. He's not somebody I covet for the Seahawks at all. And if the Falcons want to keep him in Georgia State, then go for it. Right. This is where it kind of gets a bit interesting, because the Cardinals are a threat to the players that the Seahawks possibly are targeting here. Now, in this mock, I think they've obviously brought in Josh Sweat, the Cardinals, so they've got a pass rusher. They could use some interior defenders, but I don't think there's anybody worthy of the pick. And then there's the offensive line. Now, if Will Campbell was gone at this point, they might take Gray Zabel like Daniel Jeremiah mocked. And then I think the Seahawks, I'll tell you what I think the Seahawks would do in that situation when we get to 18. But because Will Campbell's there, I'm not a huge Will Campbell fan. I don't think he can play guard because I think he's too upright and not aggressive enough. And I think his short arms at tackle could be an issue. Some teams don't care as much about the short arms. I think you probably have to play him at right tackle and give him some support to do that. That's where their hole would be. So I've got Will Campbell going to the Cardinals. But let's say they took Gray Zabel here instead. I'm not sure the Seahawks would pivot to him, Adam, because I just don't think he's a guard. I think it's hard to put him at guard and place him at guard because he doesn't play with that aggression that you want to see from your offensive lineman. And his tape was not very good last year at LSU. I don't really know why people keep talking about him as an option at 4th overall. I hope the Patriots do take him at 4th overall because that would be crazy and funny. Right, we're nearly at the Seahawks. Bengals. Adam, of all the teams who for some reason just seem to be attracted to players with character issues, they probably should know better, but they can't help themselves. And we're not just talking about not being very nice people in the locker room. We're talking about some awful things. Joe Mixon is a good example of that. They don't seem to care in Cincinnati. And I think whereas some teams are going to be very, very wary of Mike Green, I'm not sure that the Bengals are going to be, based on what has become known of him, let's say, over the last few weeks. I'm sure teams will do their homework on him, and some will just think, maybe we can't find out enough about this, so we're not going to go there. I don't think the Bengals will have that thought process, and we'll take him at number 17. So here we are. It's 18, Adam. And
drum roll, please.
Yeah. So the players, I will talk about some of the alternatives after. I do think this is why there is a relaxed atmosphere around the Seahawks, because I do think they believe that Gray Zabel is going to be there at 18. And I also think they think there's a good chance that he'll be best player available when they get there. And it's not so much that it's not like Byron Murphy. They thought he was the best defensive player in the draft and they took him with their first pick a year ago. It won't be like that. There'll be about 10, 15 players who have a very similar grade to Gray Zabel. But because of the positional need compared to the similar grade, he will end up being the first name on their board and they will take him. That is what I think is going to happen. It will be very predictable. I think the only thing that is going to stop this, Adam, is the Cardinals or the Colts taking him off the board, which I would not rule out, by the way, or even the Bengals for that matter. I think 14, 16, and 17 are the places you need to be worried about Gray Zabel going off the board. I think if he's there at 18, they will take him. And there's one other thing I want to say before I get your views on this. I don't think they're going to take him just with the view that they're going to plug him in at guard. I think they'll think, we're going to see what's going to happen in the rest of this draft. And if they draft a center, they'll play him at guard. If they don't draft a center, they might put him at center instead and take somebody else who can play guard. That's how I think they're going to approach this. They're going to think that he can play guard or center, and they'll work it out down the line. I prefer him at guard, but a lot of other people prefer him at center. So it'd be interesting to see what they would do in this situation. But the point I'm making is he would give them some flexibility to work out their offensive line, whether Grable starts at guard or center. And if they believe he can play center with what he shows on tape and what he has shown in his workouts, the third, his testing's almost as similar to Tristan Wirfs. Tristan Wirfs. You want somebody like that at this range. So I think he'll be the pick at 18. People are saying, what if he's gone? I'll get onto that in a second. Adam, your thoughts on this idea at 18?
Well, look, it's fist bumps all round for those that have put a few dollars on the 10-guard draft. Got off the mark with the first one. So 9 more to go. I would be delighted. And if it didn't work out, you wouldn't hear a peep from me complaining that it hasn't worked out. I've said a number of times on this stream, I don't think that they are in a position where they can afford to get clever from an optics standpoint. They've got to take, particularly after this, the way that free agency has transpired, and some would say that's by design. However, whatever's happened, they have appeared to be incredibly relaxed in free agency about the interior of the offensive line. So for me, I think they have to do this. And yeah, as someone just said in the chat, I think everyone would be at worst happy with the decision to take that pick at 18. To put it back onto you, this is a realistic Seahawk mock draft, and you're putting yourself in the position of the GM at the time. What would you do in this position? And I won't hold you against it if you want to go elsewhere, because you've done so many of these that you might as well give your opinion. People are here for your opinions on this. So you're the guru on this stuff, and I think you've got every right to say, give some opinions on what you think.
There'd be three players I'd be thinking of in this situation. One will be Gray Zabel, and I may well take Gray Zabel. The other two would be Maxwell Hairston, the cornerback at Kentucky. I would seriously consider taking him at 18. I think he's a top 15 player in this draft. And the other player would be Donovan Ezeraku, the pass rusher from Boston College. I think all three of them, exceptional character, plus physical profiles. Zabel, unbelievably explosive. Hairston, sensational, ran a 4.2. Ezeraku, a 4.19 short shuttle at his size, length for days, all excellent characters, like I said. Production, Hairston with a ton of picks. Hairston with 16.5 sacks last year. Zabel, just watch the tape, unbelievable. I think they're the three that I'd be sort of focusing on in this situation. And if Zabel was gone, then I would take one of the other two. So that's how I would view it. And I wouldn't pivot to another offensive line. I've seen in the chat someone say Kelvin Banks Jr. I don't think he's a guard. I think he's a tackle. I think they will take him and put him there. I think he's a right tackle. So I wouldn't go to him. I would say, okay, I trust in the board. I know I've got my own horizontal board. I know I can find options on the offensive line later on. Everyone's going to hate it. People are going to be shouting on Twitter. People are going to be shouting at me saying, you don't know what you're talking about, Staten, because you approve of the Maxwell Hairston or the Donovan Ezeraku picks. But that's what I would do if Zabel is gone. I would go for those two players. But in this instance, Zabel's there. I'm going to take him. Somebody has sent this in. I just want to put it up. Right. They've said, really, with Shamar Stewart, and I think he means James Pierce Jr. on the board, we just lost an Nwosu to another surgery. Here's what I would say about those two players. Shamar Stewart, everyone's like, what a combine. What a combine. Okay, yeah. Physical profile, excellent. I went through every single player who's been drafted in the last however many years with his physical profile, because I'm a sad act. I don't have a social life. That's what I do in my evenings. I go and look at these things. When I had a look at all of the players with his physical profile, and I went through all of the players with his physical profile who've ended up having good NFL careers, and the average number of sacks they had in their college careers, having succeeded in the NFL with his physical profile, was 25 sacks per person per college career. Shamar Stewart had 4.5 sacks in his college career. So his rate is on par with all of the players of his physical profile who flopped, who didn't succeed, who were taken because of their physical profile. And when they got to the NFL, that wasn't good enough to be a game-wrecking player. So I'm not saying that Shamar Stewart's going to be terrible. I'm just saying that, in my opinion, I wouldn't take him because the odds are stacked. When you look at he's not a finisher. He is a nearly man. He has to learn how to rush the passer. And that is why I wouldn't go there. They ain't taking James Pierce Jr. I can tell you that now. Because the character issues, that ain't happening. It ain't happening. You can take that one to the bank. If they're going to take a pass rusher in this situation, it'd be much more likely to be Ezeraku, who was a captain at Boston College and an exceptional player. So I've gone with Gray Zabel. That's the first pick for the Seahawks. We'll get on to round 2 in a bit. And then at the end, I'll quickly run through who I would have taken with the other picks there. But let's finish the first round. Then we'll do the super chats. Then we'll do the second round, if that's okay with everybody. Right. Number 19, Tampa Bay. I've just talked about him. I think he's a great player with bags of potential. Maxwell Hairston. They want ball hawks. That's what Tampa Bay have been saying publicly. We want ball hawks. I don't know why they've made that so publicly clear, but they have. It helps those of us who do mock drafts for sure, but they say they want defensive backs in the draft. So I'm going to give them Maxwell Hairston because I think he's a terrific player. I think he's going to go in the top 20, top 22 maybe. It's just to open it up a little bit to expand it. Right, Denver at number 20. Now, I keep wanting to give them Travion Henderson because, first of all, it seems everything is geared towards him taking a running back. I don't know why, but it is. I wanted to give him Travion Henderson because he's got a bit more in pass pro and as a pass catcher. But Amari and Hampton is graded higher on pretty much everybody's board, including mine. So I'm going to give him Amari and Hampton instead. But I'm just saying it would not surprise me if they took Travion Henderson instead. And then the Steelers, the hapless Steelers, the grass is greener Steelers, according to DK Metcalf, with their no quarterbacks on the roster and their flirt with Aaron Rodgers. And you know what? Maybe they'll get lucky and Aaron Rodgers will decide to, for want of a better way of putting it, have a one-night stand with them or 1 year stand with them. Because that's basically what this is. And it's quite beneath a Steelers organization that they are having to sort of go begging to Aaron Rodgers a little bit and waiting on him when they really should have a solution at quarterback. They've had plenty of years to know that Ben Roethlisberger was going and to draft Kenny Pickett and to do what they did, like short-termism last year. And now they're in this hole that they're in. They have to do something other than just Aaron Rodgers. So I think they've kind of, a bit like the Giants, have backed themselves into a corner here. And we'll take Jackson Dart. 22, Will Johnson. I love Will Johnson as a player, but the injuries, and there's a bit of chatter about, if he did run, he wouldn't run very fast, and that makes me think he's going to last a bit longer. And then his old head coach, Jim Harbaugh, will come to the rescue and take him 22nd overall. 23, Ezeraku, tremendous player. Really, really good player. Packers would have loved Hairston, I think, or Johnson here, but they're both gone. So they pivot and take the edge rusher instead. Minnesota at 24, Nick Emanwari. I saw a lot of people in the chat sort of saying they wanted Emanwari to Seattle, Adam. I can make an argument for Malachi Starks. I can't make an. I like Nick Emanwari. I think he's a really good guy from what I've seen of interviews. His tape's fine. It's good tape. I get an Isaiah Simmons vibe from him. And I really like Simmons. And I think he was a better player than Emanwari. Is he a difference maker? He doesn't hit anybody either. He's a big guy with speed. Doesn't really hit anybody. Doesn't hammer anybody. I want to see him hammer. You're 220 pounds, man. Can you go and level somebody for me, please? Like, he doesn't do that. So I'm just not sure. And also, I watched pretty much every South Carolina game last season. I think I may have watched all of them. And I watched them for the defense, not for the offense. And there were 4 other players on that defense who seemed to, impact games more than him. Like, I never sat and watched a game and thought they've won that game because of Nick Emanwari. But I did think of Kennard or Sanders or Tonka Hemingway. I didn't, or Knight or Demetrius Knight as 5. Like, there was players like Knight in particular who I thought they're winning the game for them. And I'm sorry, I don't believe that Emanwari was the difference there. And it's not that he's a bad player, he's a decent player. But I think people thinking he's going to be Kyle Hamilton might be a bit disappointed at him.
He feels like the player, there's one normally every year, the non-skilled position player that everyone is going to be watching to see how it transpires with him. Like, not in a, there was the Jalen Carter stuff where some were expecting magic and some weren't so sure. And you do get these views. There was more of a personal thing there, but the range of opinions I've seen on him feel to be the broadest, from the biggest optimists to the ones that aren't so keen, or not so keen, but that he feels like the player that people are going to be watching with the most interest out of this first round, aside from the obvious ones, just to see how it goes.
Yeah, I think the combine is a great thing, but he ran a 40 and jumped and didn't do any of the drills, and people were like, wow, all of a sudden he's a top 15 pick and everyone's talking about him. It's like, well, everybody knew he was an athlete. Like, this wasn't a surprise. Like, everybody expected him to run fast and jump high. He didn't do any of the drills. Didn't get to the Senior Bowl. He didn't get to the Shrine Game. Like, none of this was a surprise that he ran and jumped fast. And all of a sudden the reason he was even in the first round conversation because he was an athlete, and it got counted twice. So it proved he was an athlete. So we're going to bump him up an extra 10 spots. I didn't really see that. And the same with Shamar Stewart. It's like he runs. I don't think he did any of the drills at the combine. He just ran. And again, okay, he ran and jumped well, so we'll bump him up. But no, he was an athlete. Like, the reason he was in the first round conversation is purely for his athleticism. Like, why are we suddenly putting him in the top 10? Why didn't you have him there before? So I think Emin Warry here, I think this is the kind of range he's going to go in, personally. Right. 25. This is where I am going to propose a trade with the Browns moving up for the Texans. And this is where it gets tricky, Adam, because trying to get the computer to accept a trade is really hard. So I don't really want to. I'm going to try and manipulate the system so that basically it happens. Okay, it's happened. Perfect. I shouldn't have said anything. I should have just done it because usually it says no, but it's done it this time. So forget that. That trade.
But they updated it because I remember last year or maybe 2 years ago they'd accept any old bollocks you threw out there.
No, there's the other ones. Will you can force the trades on the PFF one, but the reason I don't like the PFF one is it kind of judges you at the end. It gives you a grade, and I feel like no, piss off. No, I don't need your judgment call. Basically, if you take everybody that PFF tells you should take, you get an A. And it's like, well, I don't want that. If I want to take someone who's like 100 places below your rankings because I don't agree with you, and then it gives you an F, and you just feel like get stuff PFF. So I always use this one instead. Right, I have got the Texans trading down and the Browns trading up. Why do I have the Browns trading up to 25? You might ask. I'm glad. Well, if you have asked that question, I would have been delighted because I think the Rams have got their eye on the quarterbacks, the top 4 quarterbacks. Their GM did an interview recently and was like really strangely going, yeah, there's not going to be many quarterbacks to go in the first round this year. So, we're hopeful that they do because we'd, quite like that. And I'm thinking, why are you saying this stuff? I think the Matt Stafford thing, they've never really revealed his contract details. I think Matt Stafford's basically agreed to like a 1-year arrangement to stay in LA. And I think they're prepared to take somebody to potentially replace him. So I think the Browns will jump ahead of the Rams to make sure there's no chance of them missing out on the guy that they want. The Browns have not really done anything at quarterback apart from trade for Kenny Pickett. I think they will look at Tyler Shough and say the maturity and the everything like that will work in their favor, that they compare him with Kevin Stefanski, Adam, and he can start in year 1. That's what I think the Browns will do. And if the Browns come out of this with Abdul Carter paired with Myles Garrett at number 2, and then can find a way to get a quarterback who I think is pretty good, and with Kevin Stefanski could be, their Bo Nix essentially, not stylistically, but in terms of impact, they could have quite an interesting team, Adam, in Cleveland. Better than perhaps people would expect right now.
Yeah, I mean, things can change so quickly. And, ultimately, as long as they're only paying one, if the quarterback room is taking up a certain amount of money, the Watson thing is a disaster. But as long as you're only paying one of them and you've got a rookie guy that's playing quite well, you can mitigate around that. I'll still never get over the fact that they just booted Baker Mayfield out the door after one bad season. I mean, where might they be in a different scenario there? Just incredible. And I do feel sad for that Browns fan that's got the ever rolling jersey of the different. He's got to add 2 more quarterbacks or another quarterback to his list. It'll be touching the floor soon. The poor sod.
Well, he's got another name now. According to this mock, it's Shough. So he goes at 25. The Rams, having missed out on the cornerbacks and the quarterbacks, now are in a bit of a weird situation. And what I think they're going to do, and people are going to probably hate this, I think they might take Travion Henderson here and just have a weapon. Just somebody who can come in and provide a bit of an X factor in the backfield as a pass catcher. And I think just offer a bit more at that position. McVay's offense, when it had Todd Gurley completely at his best, that's when they were at their best. So I kind of wonder whether or not they might, if in this situation where Maxwell Hairston's gone, Will Johnson's gone, Jackson Dart's gone, Tyler Shough's gone, whether they take Travion Henderson. That was a thought that I'm not that confident on the pick. I'm just saying trying to think outside the box a little bit. What are their needs? Not really defensive line. A lot of defensive linemen in the draft anyway. Maybe they take Travion Henderson here. I think there's a good chance he will kind of go in this range. Baltimore at number 27. I I'm going to have them taking Kelvin Banks. Now, the reason I've got them taking Kelvin Banks, now I said I thought he's a right tackle, and they've got Roger Rosengarten at right tackle. So the reason I've got them taking Kelvin Banks is I don't personally think he's a guard. Some other people do. I think you take him with the objective of playing him at guard, and then if Ronnie Stanley has more injury problems, you are covered. That's how I think they will justify this, because Ronnie Stanley does have some injury issues. And he could be the long-term answer at left tackle when Ronnie Stanley calls it a day in 2 or 3 years' time. So that's my thought process with Kelvin Banks there. One of my favorite fits for this entire mock, Tyler Booker to the Lions. In terms of personality, they've not replaced Kevin Zeitler. I think it's a perfect fit. Adam, I would love the Seahawks to take Tyler Booker because I like Tyler Booker as a player. I like his tape. I love his tape. I like him. But I've conceded defeat on this. Even if Kyle Shanahan and Matt LaFleur have ended up drafting Aaron Banks high and then paying him $19.25 million a year. Aaron Banks, very similar testing profile to Tyler Booker. When I heard John Schneider the other day talking in his interview on Seattle Sports saying, we want players who are going to reach up to the second level and do all of that stuff, it just made me think, they ain't going to take a guy who's better in gap for the NFL. They're not going to take a phone booth blocker. They're going to want someone who can run to the next level, run into space, be fast and aggressive. And Tyler Booker's more of a grappler. He's a barroom brawler in the trenches. So as much as I want to see him at 18, Adam, I just don't think it's going to happen, I'm afraid.
You know, as much as scheme does dictate so many things, what sort of percentage or risk do you put on? Yeah, there's always a guy, right, that a year later you think, why don't we just take him? Like there's the Creed Humphrey thing a few years ago. Now, look, loads of teams passed on him, so you can't necessarily say that we're the idiots, but it could be a league-wide thing. But what's your percentage fear that Tyler Booker's that bloke that you think in a year's time, like, we could have just taken that guy and it would have been great?
I'm not actually that worried about that. I don't fear that because I've always thought Tyler Booker's a really good player. So if it happens, it just won't be a surprise. I think the player that there's 2 players in round 2. When I come to them, I'll mention them, Adam. There's 2 players in round 2 that I think could be that. But I'll save that for when we get to round 2. Charlie said that the Booker screams Ravens to me. And you're absolutely right. He could, maybe they do that instead and just plug Booker in. You could easily do that. And maybe if I could go back, Charlie, I'd do that. Put Booker at 27. Maybe keep Kelvin Banks on the board a little longer. Pivot and give the Lions somebody else. That definitely makes sense. But in this instance, it's the other way around. Right, Commanders at 29. I do not like all of these mock drafts putting Ted McMillan with the Seahawks. I think there's no chance, Adam. I just think it speaks to people who haven't really done a lot of homework on the Seahawks. I mean, they talk so much about wanting to be this certain type of team and all of this. I know there's a best player available angle here to it, but I just don't think Ted McMillan's that good. I don't think he's worth the number 18 pick. I don't really understand it. Like, he's not fast. He's not a great vertical jumper. I mean, he's even admitted that. He said, my vertical's about a 31-inch vertical. So he can't jump for a receiver. He can't run. Like, where's the evidence that this guy is going to be amazing? Like, maybe he will be. But Keenan Allen, he didn't test very well, and he was amazing. But guess what? He went in the 3rd round. He didn't go 18th overall. So I don't see it. And I think if he lasts, and he probably will last, I think it'd be a good option for the Commanders here. But I do not see, and again, if I'm wrong, record this, send it to me. I do not see any way the Seahawks are going to take Ted McMillan at 18. I just don't. I just don't expect it at all. Right, let's round out round 1. Shamar Stewart to the Bills. This is the kind of range where somebody can take a chance on him, and they took a chance on Gregory Rousseau, so they like this kind of player. I think they could do it here. With the Chiefs, I've got them taking Kenneth Grant, not a player that I'm massively crazy about. I think his tape is underwhelming, and you kind of left wanting a bit more. His testing at the Michigan Pro Day was not as good as Bruce Feldman was suggesting it would be in his freaks list. And then I am going to have James Pierce Jr. going off the last pick of the first round. He could fall into round 2 because of the character issues, but the Eagles, as they showed with Jalen Carter, are often minded to turn a blind eye to that stuff. And I've actually had success sort of working with these kind of players. So that's where we're going to go for round 1. What we're going to do now is we'll get to the super chats and then we'll quickly run through round 2 and then I'll run through the Seahawks picks. I'm aware that we've already done an hour and 5 minutes, Adam, and this could go on forever if we don't speed things along. So quickly onto the super chats. Nano says, does John see eye to eye with us regarding how the Geno and DK moves present a chance to achieve alignment, become the tough team no one wants to play? What do you think, Adam?
I mean, he certainly preaches that that's his aim and that's what he wants the team to look like. I find it difficult to ascertain anything that John Schneider says in a press conference or in front of a microphone because he just seems so uncomfortable with the whole situation whenever he's asked a difficult question. Are there any teams that don't want to be, a tough nose, hard running team now? Like, however much flair you may have, every team's fundamentals, they want to be, win at the line of scrimmage. I think though, I'm not sure those two things are necessarily aligned in the sense that they've done A in order to make B happen. I think A has happened and B is always the intention.
I think they will see it as a chance to shift resources to the areas that will make them the team they want to be. I just don't think they're going to force it. I don't think they're going to go out of their way, and they've shown that, to pay a lot of money for an average offensive lineman just because, or to draft somebody early because. I think they're going to still look for the value side of things, but ideally, yes, they will. I think they will sort of view it that way. Nano also has sent 2 more in. Here's an extra few bucks to celebrate how rosy Adam's cheeks are tonight. Thank you, Adam.
I think that was my cap shadow, but hey, maybe it was the whiskey earlier. Who knows?
And Nano says, why has the internet collectively forgotten about Quinn Ewers' performance against Saban's Alabama in Alabama? Recency bias. I think, Nano, just because it's one game. It's one game. He was sensational in that game. It's not the only good game that he has had. But I think that's part of the issue, and that there have been a lot of games where he didn't play very well. I think there's some mitigating circumstances there. The injuries are definitely one. But then you also say he has been injured too often. And that is a problem and a concern. There are some mechanical things that he needs to fix. But I do think what the internet has done, has decided it hates Quinn Ewers and therefore is overly negative about Quinn Ewers, as it is known to do. Like, it picks players like Geno Smith's a good example. Everybody, a whole bunch of cool kids like Geno Smith, so they always talk about Geno Smith. The same cool kids will kind of hate Quinn Ewers because they don't like Quinn Ewers. There are pros and cons to every player, and I don't think the pros of Quinn Ewers get mentioned often enough, but there are some striking negatives as well that also need to be discussed. And I think, in fairness, that's one of the things we've done quite well on SeahawksDraftBlog.com, is that we have looked at the light and the shade with Ewers. And Nano says, how does Chad Reuter still have a job? That dude can shampoo my nethers. His mocks are always crap for the entirety of the NFC West. Thank you, Nano, for that. For the I've never heard he can shampoo my nethers, but I'm definitely going to use that with one of my work colleagues this week when I see them and tell them that line. Sam says, love both of your analysis. What would make sense of moving 18 for a future 2026 first? And how do you feel about those future possibilities? Understanding nothing is certain for that draft class. Thank you, Sam. This is kind of like the trendy thing, Adam, online, is to try and get picks for 2026, but it hardly ever happens. Like, the only way that you're going to get a first rounder next year is to trade 25 picks back, I think, in this class. I do think you can get some stock next year because Todd McShay pitched a trade proposal where the Giants moved up to 19 this week and they gave up a first, a third, and a third next year. And if I was the Seahawks, I'd be attracted to that kind of an offer in this draft and getting an extra pick next year. But that's a third next year. It's not a first next year. So I think it's almost impossible to get a first rounder in 2026 based on where the Seahawks are, unless somebody absolutely has to have the quarterback. But even then, you kind of wonder, well, why do they need 18? Do they want to go a bit higher than that? Will someone else take the offer? Do they wait a little bit longer and look at 19, 20 to make that move? Why would it be 18? So I think it's very difficult, Adam.
Yeah, I also think sort of death, taxes, and wait till you see next year's quarterback class. They're so much better than this year's. You know, it's just these inevitables that it's that classic trope that gets rolled out every year. Some years it's always going to be true, but I feel like it's just one of those lines that's thrown out there every year as kind of a validation attempt. But yeah, I'm struggling to see it. For me, in general, the classes are generally getting worse and worse with a brief spike every 3 or 4 years of a really good class. And look, what do I know? Maybe next year's is a generational class, but it doesn't strike me from what I'm hearing that's actually true, as opposed to just a trope.
No, it's bollocks. It's there's basically like a couple of players who didn't declare for this draft and have gone back in Garrett Nussmeier and Drew Aller. And there's one or two others like Levitt at Arizona State. There's one or two others who could emerge, but then you never know if they're going to declare. Arch Manning's not going to declare next year. After 1 year as being a starter, he's going to at least play 2 years at Texas. And Arch Manning hasn't shown anything to be, it's just his second name at the moment. Like, he needs to actually play football well to justify some of the expectations that he's getting at the minute. And he hasn't done that yet. Noah says you should make videos about each of your top 10 in each position group. Will be fun to get in-depth analysis player by player each draft cycle. I'm happy to do a video. If people want a video like that, I'm happy to do a video like that. And if people want to see what my top 10s are at each position, then head over to Seahawks Draft Blog and you will find my horizontal board on there. Kevin says flip 50 for future 2026 first. I mean, you ain't going to be able to do that. Yeah, no one is going to give you a first rounder next year for number 50 and a 2025 day 3 pick. Cons. Kevin. It's just not feasible for someone to give you a first for the number 50 pick. If they were going to do that, they'd give whoever was and picking 40th the pick, and they'd just do it that way if it was attractive. Dogzilla Monster says, Mike, best player available scores be really tight by 18. Yep, they'll be very tight. I suspect there'll be about a clump of a few players, all very similarly graded in that area. And in that circumstance, you do tend to lean towards best player available at a position in need. And that's why I think Gray Zabel will ultimately be best player available at 18, because they'll say, yeah, okay, he's got a similar grade, someone like Maxwell Hairston, Donovan Nezaraku, people like that, but we need an offensive lineman, so we're going to take him. That's ultimately what it'll be. And it won't be a reach. I think he's worthy of a pick. That as soon as you start testing like Tristan Wirfs, you're worthy of a top 20 pick, in my opinion. And his tape's fantastic. So Cisco says, sorry, guys, joining in late. Would you mind starting over? Appreciate it. Cisco, thank you for that. Appreciate the super chat. Apologies that we started just a bit too soon for you there.
That really made me laugh when it came through. I just wasn't expecting it at all. And I was really laughing. Yeah. It was good.
I think people would be mortified if we went through that first round again. It took a long time. And Justin said, who's the EPL equivalent of the Seahawks? Is it Newcastle? Passionate fans stuck in the corner of the country. Some good players, but a history of mediocrity. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know who they'd be, because the Seahawks have won a Super Bowl.
If they'd won the league in ~96 and had that sort of moment of being at the top, then definitely that would have been about right. I think if Tottenham would have done anything when we were actually good in 2017, 2018, that may have been a decent comparison. But it's so hard, like the parity in the NFL versus the just nonsense of the Premier League now makes it so hard to compare the two, doesn't it? But I think Newcastle overall is a really good shout, actually.
Yeah. There isn't a perfect match, so I think that's probably the one to go with. Right, let's finish off this mock and do
with the final 6 rounds.
We're going to do the next round, and then I'll run through the rest of it. Right, I'll shoot through some of these to get to 50 and 52. Texans, I've got taken Emeka Egbuka. I just think it's a great fit. You know, CJ Stroud reunited with Egbuka, played at Ohio State. And they need someone reliable. They need someone who can just sort of get a third down, stuff like that. They've done a lot of work on their offensive line, so I think they could turn to receiver here. Giants have to improve their offensive line. I've got them taking Donovan Jackson at 34. Titans don't have enough weapons. Luther Burden the third here. I've got falling out of the first round. Just not create any buzz during the draft season. Burden, he didn't run particularly fast. The All-Star game, it just seems just like his stock just seems to have plateaued really badly. Jacksonville at 36. They did not take Mason Graham, so I've got them taking Derek Harmon here. I've been more impressed with him than I thought I would be at the combine, but his frame's a bit flabby in the midriff. 37. They didn't take Ashton Genty, so they take Quinshon Judkins here instead at 37. Kind of the same range that Seattle took Ken Walker. And I think his body type, when I saw him at the combine, reminded me a bit of Ken Walker. He's not the same player, but the frame, very muscular. It's very similar. Josh Simmons at 38. Simmons apparently has got some character concerns. Apparently there's some attitude issues there. So that's why he might fall a bit alongside the injury. And I do not think the Seahawks will take him. I wrote about him, potentially the Seahawks, and I found out a little bit about what he's like, and I'm not sure they're going to take him, to be honest. Which is a shame because he is a good scheme fit. 39, Chicago. Mason Taylor, brilliant player. Can be there, Sam Laporta. I think he's a top player, top 40 player for sure. New Orleans need a receiver. Jalen Noel is a really, really good player. As soon as I watched him the first time, really fell for him. And I think he's a top 45 lock for me with the way he's played. 41, Chicago. Now, Adam, you were saying, give us the name of a player who, after the, down the line, we say, how did he last? How did it? Braden Swinson of LSU is that player for me. I don't really understand why he's not getting more buzz. He is an unbelievable pass rusher. He had the most pressures alongside Donovan Ezeraku in college football's regular season last year. More than Abdul Carter, more than Jack Sawyer. All of these players who were at the end, because of the playoffs, ended up at the top of the list. Well, the top two for pressures in the college football last year were Braden Swinson and Donovan Ezeraku. Heavy hands, can bend the arc, rush the passer, can play the run. Just fantastic. Braden Swinson is a fantastic player. And I would love for him to last to 50 or 52. Todd McShay's got him ranked like something like 65th on his board. If he lasts to 50 or 52, Adam, I am running to that. I'm jetpacking that podium up again, and I'm taking Braden Swinson. But I just think he's too good to fall to 50. And I hope he does fall, but I'm not optimistic that he will. 42 Jets. Tyleik Williams could do with shifting a bit of weight. I think he'd be a better player for it, but he's athletic and he's explosive. Couple of defensive tackles go off here. Walter Nolan, few character concerns. Tape, flashes are good, but the flashes are too few and far between. Niners take a chance on him here. And the Dallas Cowboys. Quinn Ewers, number 44. There's been a bit of chatter about that, Adam, in the last week. And I don't know why. I don't know what the plan is in Dallas, but given that everything else is a bit balmy, this would make sense, wouldn't it? It just follow along with everything. But apparently, the reports are, I think it was Ian Rappaport who put this out. Somebody has put this out saying they might take Quinn Ewers in round 2. And I don't know if that's, they've let Cooper Rush leave. They've let him walk. He's gone to sign for the Ravens. And they don't have a backup now. So maybe they bring in Quinn Ewers. Maybe they work to develop him for 2 or 3 years and think he can replace Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott kind of came in and Wally pipped Tony Romo. Maybe they think that Quinn Ewers can do something similar and that in a year or two that he's going to be the starter, Adam. But it was really, really random that Quinn Ewers was connected to Dallas. If they make this move, Adam, it will send shockwaves to the NFL, won't it? Because this is just, but this seems to be the direction that they're going in. They're probably going to take a receiver first and then maybe take Quinn Ewers here.
Yeah, particularly a year after that Prescott deal came down. If it was next year, you could think, well, maybe they're looking to future-proof what they want to do. But talk about a way to get back into the headlines. I think that would be it. And I have a hunch that you'd be a smidge disappointed. I don't think you've got your fully into bat for him, but I think you probably have slightly more positive views on him than others do and wouldn't be gutted if he ended up being a Seahawk.
I honestly wouldn't give a toss. I wouldn't care less. This is part of the problem is that by sort of, sometimes players get elevated way beyond their station. So, for example, people may watch this, Adam, and think, I don't like Nick Emanwari, or I don't like Shamar Stewart. And really, I'm not. I'm just trying to provide the balance that that's not out there, where people just go, "No, I ran fast." And with Quinn Ewers, it's like I look online, and during the college football season, it was stupid. Some of the stuff I was reading about it was really, really unbelievably negative, and without any context for the injuries or the situation, or if anybody else was to blame, like the pass pro. Like, he had a really bad game against Georgia. The offensive line got whipped, and no one was mentioning that. Yet the next day, like, Geno Smith had played really bad behind an offensive line. Everyone's pointing the finger at the offensive line. So I don't understand why there's been a lack of balance about Quinn Ewers. And by providing that bit of balance on him, you end up sounding like you really like him or you want him. And I don't. It's not that I'm desperate for the Seahawks to take Quinn Ewers, or that I think he's going to be a franchise quarterback per se. I have a sneaking suspicion that John likes him, and that he's the kind of player that John will go after. I can imagine a scenario where Schneider takes him. I'm not pining for it, rooting for it. When I do these mock drafts, there are other players that I'd rather take in round 2. But if John thinks he is the real deal, I'd be intrigued by it, because he'd be the first quarterback he's taken early since Russ. And is Russ even an early pick? He was 75. This would be 25 picks higher if he took him at 50. So I'd be intrigued by it, but he is not somebody that I'm banging the table for like I would a Braden Swinson, let's say. Okay. So that's the latest chapter of Cowboys making headlines. Elijah Arroyo, they need a playmaking tight end. And if Colson Loveland's gone, they may just circle back in round 2 and take Arroyo here at 45 at a tremendous Senior Bowl. A few injury concerns, but I think they'll take him here. I mean, it would be quite fun if they took Jihad Campbell and Elijah Arroyo and neither of them played as rookies, but there you go. 46 Atlanta. They need a cornerback here, so I'm going to give them Azariah Thomas. Cardinals went O-line in the first round, so let's give them Landon Jackson here, number 47. Bit stiff, not agile, but explosive and built like a Terminator. 48 Miami. Their tackle, his name is completely... Can you remember his name? He used to play for the Saints. Dolphins.
No.
Left tackle.
It's not Terran Armstead. No.
Terran Armstead, that's it. He is seemingly
big spot.
What a great save. He is apparently thinking of retiring. So I am going to give them Josh Connolly here at 48. 49 Cincinnati. I just think this is such a Tate Ratledge to the Bengals feels like a fit. It feels like a stylistic fit, personality fit. It just seems to fit to me. Like 49 Bengals, Ratledge. They've got a hole at right guard. You plug Ratledge in there. I think it's a good pick. Okay, we are now on to 50, and then the Broncos get in the way, and then it's 52. The number 50 pick. I think, Adam, that if Mason Taylor or Elijah Arroyo is on the board here, they would take them. I think they want a dynamic pass-catching tight end. I think they've kept Noah Fant on the off chance that they miss out, and as a hedge. But I think if they could get to Arroyo or Taylor, they might just cut Fant or trade him for a bag of beans or whatever. Bag of magic beans. Plant them in the garden at the VMAC. So I'd keep an eye on the tight ends, is what I'm saying. If there's a tight end at 50 or 52, they might take him. But they've got him. So we have to look somewhere else. So I have got them taking a player that I'm going to have to search for on the list. I have got them taking Jack Besh. An elite name. Jack Besh. But spelled Betch. And I just love Jack Besh, Adam. And when I said earlier there were a couple of players in the second round who you think we might talk about in the future and go, how on earth did they last this long? The first was Braden Swinson, the second was Jack Besh. Jack Besh is an unbelievable player. his body control, he's not got the most amazing long speed, but he's got that suddenness to him. Contested catches, body control, concentration when the ball is in the air to adjust and make the catch. He is an absolute friggin' monster with the ball in his hands and finishes every run. He reminds me of a more aggressive Jordy Nelson, and John Schneider loved Jordy Nelson at Green Bay. I've just got a feeling that Jack Bech could be the player that everybody wanted DK Metcalf to be, frankly. And I think Bech should be an unbelievable pick at 50. I don't know if he's gonna be there. Like I do these mock drafts at him, and then afterwards I wake up to him, I go, what the hell were you thinking? Jack Bech isn't gonna last to 50. But then other people, someone's just said that Nelson's was much faster. Jordy Nelson ran, I think, a 4.53 at the combine. He wasn't elite speed. He wasn't like a 4.3, 4.4 kind of guy. Bech is that kind of same speed. I've just got a feeling, like, I don't know what you think, Adam, the idea of them taking a receiver at 50 here, but I would just encourage everybody to go and watch Jack Bech. Jack Bech is an unbelievable player, and I think he will go in round 2, and I think whoever takes him may well look back on this and go, what on earth did the NFL do allowing him to go in round 2? I think he's a fantastic player.
I have no issue with the positional pick. It's obviously an area of need, particularly with the way that the league is going. Would you have any concerns about taking a receiver at that level that isn't necessarily your straight line runner, downfield threat that we appear to need? And people sort of pigeonholing MVS in that role. We don't really know what we're going to get out of him. Any concerns from a stylistic standpoint that good player, but perhaps not a need, for want of a better term?
I have no concerns because I think on tape he runs downfield enough and takes the top off a defense enough, and he can run the seam, he can run down the sideline, and oh my word, just the contested catches. Like, how many times you watch DK Metcalf throw him the ball and he doesn't come up with those catches, those contested catches on the red line, and Jack Bech does it over and over and over again. There is just something about him. He's just got this star quality to him. Just this unbelievable star quality. I think he's the 24th best player in the draft. And I think if you can get him at 50, my grade doesn't mean anything. It's just my opinion. And if I'm right on that, and the league, it only takes one team to agree, he isn't going to be there at 50. He's going to go in the top 40. But Bech he's an unbelievable player. And he might not run a 4.40, but there are plenty of NFL receivers who've run a 4.50, and the way that they make up for the lack of elite speed is by doing everything that Jack Bech has got. Unbelievable player. And the people saying, I like this player more, that's fine. Go and watch Jack Bech if you haven't watched him. I nearly swore, believable player. Like, what a player. A player that I would bang the table for. And it's not a position. I'm not drafting him because of the position. I've drafted him because of the player. I think he's a fantastic player. Right. I've got the Broncos taking Trey Harris because I just get a feeling, I don't know if it's going to work out. Sean Payton drafted Michael Thomas in almost the exact same pick with the exact same profile and the exact same playing type, and it worked out. And I've just got a feeling that he may sort of think he can make it again with Trey Harris. So I think Trey Harris at 51. He may also be interested in Jack Bech, by the way. So that'd be another spot. I don't think you could wait till 52 for Bech. Right, back to 52 for Seattle. People are going to hate this pick, Adam, by the way.
Do you want to announce it like you're on the podium, like I can boo in the background?
You can boo it if you want. Yeah, I mean that would add some dramatic effect.
I'm not going to boo.
But the way I sort of looked at this pick is, I think once you get to this range, there are going to be one or two. It's going to be challenging because there are good players, but you're now getting into a range here where I think the best players on the board are going to be in a similar range grading wise to what you get at like 70. So if you could trade down from 52, I would. I'd trade down from 52 here and try and get into a range where the value is better. But if you can't do that, you're going to have to pick somebody. And I can see loads of people are trying to guess what this pick is going to be. And no one's mentioned the name that I'm going to go for. It's a defensive player. It's a defensive tackle who is not graded very highly on it. It is Ty Robinson. Now, why Ty Robinson here? Fantastic testing profile. His testing profile is, Byron Murphy had his combine and everyone went, wow. And Ty Robinson's is pretty similar in terms of athleticism. His tape is everything that they say they want in terms of aggressive defensive player. He is relentless motor, violent, refuses to take no for an answer when trying to get into the backfield, has got an unbelievable sidestep off the snap to create the gap to run into the backfield. He had 7 sacks last year, which was the second most in college football for an interior defensive lineman. But he's not a 3 technique. He's someone who can play. He played nose for Nebraska. He played 5. He played 3. He played 1. He can play anywhere. He can play anywhere on the line. And his character is unbelievable. And I've interviewed him. And he is a Seahawk. It doesn't mean that he's going to be a Seahawk, but he is a Seahawk. I think the league's sleeping on him, Adam. I think the internet is sleeping on him. I think this is where he's going to go. And he's going to go in the second half of round 2. I think they're going to replace Roy Robertson Harris with this guy. I think that, when I talked about replacing some of the guys that have gone, they have not replaced Roy Robertson Harris. I think they could replace him with Ty Robinson easily.
So, obviously, my counter there is that I think Harris in his last game had 5 snaps that he played. So, obviously you're wanting more than just that. From a projection standpoint, which player are you hoping that he would oust from their role? Someone like a Jaron Reed? No, I think you sort of chuck him into the mix and you rotate them in. I think their plan was that Roy Robertson Harrison was not going to be just playing 5 snaps at the end of the season. I think Roy Robertson Harris sort of dictated that was the case. I think you are sort of bringing him into that rotation. If you want to go heavier and early downs, he could play 5 tech. You could definitely do that. I think you can line him up all across the line, quite frankly. Like, people are saying, I can't play nose tackle. Yeah, I'm not saying he's going to play nose tackle, all the time. He could do a snap there. I'm not saying he's going to play nose tackle permanently in the NFL. It's the fact he can play anywhere across the line. So I think you build him into that rotation. And look, Jaron Reed's not going to last forever. Jaron Reed he's got 2 years, a new 2-year contract. He's into his 30s now. Leonard Williams into his 30s. They're going to need some, to build a line that can spell these guys and also have some impact when they are playing and also play at the same time at occasions. I think he's going to be high on their board is what I think. I think he's going to be high on a lot of boards. And I think this, 52, 54 Green Bay, 55 Chargers, 56 Buffalo, 57 Carolina. I don't think he's going to get past Carolina at 57. I think if he's there at 57, Carolina will take him. So it's up to you whether you want to take him at 52 because he won't be there in round 3, I don't think. But the grade might be similar. That's the point I'm making, is that the grade might be similar with Ty that is similar to somebody you get at 70. So it's whether you just want to take the player that you really like, which may be him or maybe somebody else, or whether you want to move down or whether there's even an offer to move down. But in this situation, I've got them taking Ty Robinson. So we'll quickly run through the rest, and then I'll sort of talk about what I'm going to do with the other rounds for the Seahawks. Tampa Bay, again, they want ball hawks. They took Hairston round 1. Xavier Watts, ton of interceptions for Notre Dame. Ideal for them if they want ball hawks. Green Bay need a cornerback. Trey Amos, the cornerback at Ole Miss. Chargers,
They definitely need to add another receiver. Jaden Higgins to the Chargers at 55. 56 Buffalo. I have got them taking Carson Schwessinger to add to that position for them. 57 Carolina. I've got them taking the mayor. Where's the mayor? There's the mayor. That's his nickname that he was given at the Senior Bowl because he basically he was basically the mayor among the players. 58 Houston. Darius Alexander to add to their interior. 59 Baltimore desperately need to add a safety, and Makuba is kind of fearless. He plays like a Raven. 60 Detroit. I've just got a feeling they're going to love Demetrius Knight. He's just such a lion, so I've put him there. 61. I'm not a big fan of this player. Nick Scott, I think, is a kind of underwhelming player. A little bit overrated, but the Commanders take him here. 62 Buffalo. Benjamin Morrison would go a lot earlier if it wasn't for the injury, and there are some lingering doubts as to whether or not he, what the future is with him and his injury. So he lasts to 62 instead of going in the top 40. Same for Siobhan Ravel. He would be a first-round pick if it wasn't for the injury. And then the final pick of round 2, TJ Sanders to the Eagles. So there we go. That is the full second round. So let's have a look at what the Seahawks did before we move on. So Zabel to play guard or center. Jack Besh, because the tight ends had gone, so they take Jack Besh instead. And then Ty Robinson to replace Roy Robertson Harris. I think I've pitched this as a realistic mock, Adam. And that's not to say that I know more than everybody else. It's not. The reason I pitched it is because these are the kinds of players the Seahawks take. There are some mocks out there. They're not talking about the players. Character is big. Certain types of profile are big for the Seahawks. The positions they haven't filled so far are important to the Seahawks. And this is the thing. Like, if a tight end lasts to 50, I think they will take Mason Taylor or Elijah Arroyo. They're not, so they take Jack Besh. Ty Robinson fits as the Harrison replacement.
Would you sorry for interrupting. Would you drop Betch down to 52 if there was a tight end at 50? Or would it be sort of one pass catcher at 50, either tight end or receiver?
Yes, I think, I would have taken the tight end at 50 and Besh at 52 if the Broncos didn't take him at 51.
Cool.
Because they're grading. Because of the way that they're graded. And that would have been it. And I would have loved to get Ty Robinson still, but it's not possible. The tight ends have gone. So I'm also aware that would be all offense for the first 3 picks. I don't think that's out of this question, by the way, because the players are what the players are. You can't force a defensive pick. So, yeah, it could easily have been tight end at 50, receiver at 52. Not because I want to do that. That's just what the players are on the board. So, people are giving me their opinion. I love the fact that people give their opinion. I've seen a C+ grade already there, Adam, and stuff like that. I'm trying to give you realism, not stuff that doesn't make sense. Like, players with bad character, they ain't going to take. Players of certain profiles they're not going to take. These are the kind of players that they would consider, even if they don't end up drafting them. So the other picks, just to go through it before we wrap up, because we've done an hour and 40, Adam. 82, I have them taking Chase Lund, who is the tackle from Connecticut, who I think kicks into guard. Go on SeahawksDraftBlog.com. I've put a video of Chase Lund and a little write-up on him on the article before this one with the embed of the video in. Tell me he is not a perfect zone blocker. He is perfect for this system. Perfect. Violent. Runs to the second level. Sprints full on like a freight train to the second level and annihilates opponents at the second level. That's what this scheme needs. Combo blocks well. Subtle shifts in the running game. You kick him inside and play. By the way, he reminds me so much of Will Fries. So he's your Will Fries replacement. You put him at left guard. You put Zabel at center. Those 2 players together would give you the most violent left guard center combo in the league. I'm telling you. They are both quick, athletic, and violent. That would be a great pairing. A great pairing. So 82 is Chase Lunt, a player that not many people know about, but he's in that range for me. What do you think the position is I've gone for at 92?
Cornerback?
I've taken a quarterback.
Wow, okay.
Because I do think they are going to take a quarterback at some point. And I think they're going to draft somebody to develop them. I've got them taking Riley Leonard at 92. Riley Leonard has got a ton of work that's required on his throwing mechanics. I think at the combine, he showed that he is working on that because his combine throwing session was outstanding. And his character is top notch. He is the kind of person that I think the Seahawks want to bring into their quarterback room, in that he would be supportive of Sam Darnold, yet would be working towards being competitive. As a runner, he's a difference maker. There is some upside with him that is worth tapping into. He helped lead Notre Dame to the national championship, but beating some big opponents like Georgia along the way with some big plays. He played well in the playoffs. His QBR was in the 80s. I think he is somebody, if you don't take someone earlier than this, I think 92, which is full enough the pick you got for Geno Smith. By the way, it's not a coincidence they've given Sam Darnold DK Metcalf's number and Uchenna Nwosu Geno Smith's number. They're making a point on that. These guys want to be here and the other two didn't. That's what they were basically saying there, by the way. So it would not be a surprise if they used the Geno Smith draft pick that they got on a quarterback and one of the two picks in the 50s on a receiver as well. I mean, that would just be symmetry. So I'm going to take Riley Leonard here as a developmental, chuck him into the mix, 92 pick at the end of round 3. The remaining picks, round 4, I've got them taking Jackson Hawes, the tight end from Georgia Tech, the best blocking tight end in this draft. I think they want a dynamic pass catcher. If they can't get one, pivot to someone like Jackson Hawes, the Georgia tight end at 137. Good athleticism, good combine, but more of a physical, tone-setting run blocker. You get him at round 4. Round 5, 172. Nazir Stackhouse, the nose tackle from Georgia. Big, good run stuffing, interior defensive lineman. I thought at the combine he looked more athletic than I think people realized. And I think he's somebody who would fit perfectly into that sort of rotation in the interior. And I'd like to say, well-proportioned body, no bad weight. I thought he looked really good at the combine. So round 5, strictly a 2-down nose tackle, but somebody who was interesting. Second round 5 pick, I have got them taking a player called Robert Longerbeam, which is a fantastic name. He's a cornerback, about 5'11", not the biggest guy, about 175 pounds, culture setter, and physical, and the kind of player that they like. Ran in the 4.3s. He is a Seahawk type of player. So I can imagine them taking someone like Robert Longerbeam there in round 5. And then the final 2 picks in round 7. The first player that I have got them taking is a running back called Josh Williams from LSU. He wore the number 18 jersey at LSU, and he was just, that's for character. That's for like the leadership and character, and everything that exemplifies LSU. That's what they give it for. He's such a physical runner, and he was underused by LSU. And I think if they're going to take a running back for depth, someone like Josh Williams in round 7 is a good pick. And then the final player I'm going to take in round 7 is Bryce Cabaldieu, the Kansas tackle, who could play anywhere across the offensive line, in my opinion. He's good depth there. He's coming in for an official 30 visit with the Seahawks, and I'm going to take him in round 7 to finish things off. So there we go. That is what I think is a realistic mock draft. I've not ticked off every position, Adam. That's why they've got to have some cap space after the draft to go and fill some of those other areas. They might want to do some work after that. But I think that is a mock draft that has some realism to it in terms of the players, the types of player, and the position. Not everyone's going to love it, but I've got news for you. Not everybody is going to love Seattle's draft. They're just not. So What are your thoughts?
Yeah, like I think focusing on the first 5 picks in particular, where you would hope the meat of the draft is gonna come to us. I really like how you approached it. Even now, I'm thinking shame we didn't get the tight end, because the way you framed it, I think you raised a really good case for how that could work. And I don't mind them going offense in the first 3. I think you have a huge amount of investment in the defense already. You have a defensive-minded head coach. I would hope that one of the beauties of having a Mike Macdonald is that what he did with Kobe Bryant last season in just turning a player who was almost on the scrap heap into someone that people are now talking about as a starting caliber safety. Can you do that for 2 other players in the defense? That could be transformational for the whole team. So I don't mind them sort of shifting the resources back to offense this offseason in the draft. So I'd be pretty pleased with however that transpired.
Let me give you another name as well. So let's just say, if as an alternative, let's say they don't take Riley Leonard. Okay. Let's say they don't take a quarterback in the draft. They just say, well, Sam Darnold, and that's that. If you want an alternative pick for that Riley Leonard pick who's not a quarterback, Jonas Sanka, the safety from Virginia, is exactly the kind of player that the Seahawks, again, love to draft. Personality, physicality. He would be perfect to replace Rayshon Jenkins. He can come up to the line and hit people. He can play a bit of deep, but I think you want to play him closer to the line. I think for that Rayshon Jenkins role, he is ideal. So Jonas Sanka, go and check him out of Virginia. I think someone in round 3. I think he is somebody that could really go. People are saying like that Besh is Bobo 2.0 in the comments. That ain't true, man. Like, listen, I like Jay Bobo and I like Jay Bobo at UCLA. Jay Bobo ran a 4.9. Okay, like this is a very different prospect. He is not Jake Bobo at all. So anyway, there are my thoughts. Adam, I've kept you for long enough. Thank you for your patience throughout all of that. But it's much appreciated.
My pleasure. It was nice to be sort of the wall pass version for you could play it and get it back instead of just talking into the void to yourself for an hour. It was nice to be able to bounce some ideas, and I was educated, so hopefully everyone else was too. Given that there's been scant Seahawk news apart from a couple of comments from DK Metcalf on what I think is a bit of a hack job of a podcast from start to finish with Michael Robinson and Beast Mode. But there were still some things that I found interesting in there. Did you have any thoughts about some of the stuff that DK was saying about his role and Tyler Lockett and the sort of passing of the cultural baton from Pete's team to Mike Macdonald's team? Because I found it interesting. And I don't think you often get players, certainly in the sport that we follow and cover predominantly, being as candid as that. I don't know. What did you make of it? Because you were fairly dismissive overall in our little chat.
Yes, I've not listened to the whole thing, so I don't know everything about everything that was said. I thought it was a bit rich of DK Metcalf and perhaps indicative of maybe him, that he has left the Seahawks and the first time that he's spoken publicly about anything to do with the Seahawks is with Marshawn Lynch and Michael Robinson and has said the things that he said. I think it doesn't... The Seahawks traded up for DK Metcalf and gave him a chance to have a really good spell to start his career. They paid him his second contract as well as his first. And I think to come out afterwards and say the grass is greener in Pittsburgh just didn't sit well with me at all. And I didn't enjoy that because it hasn't been for a lot of players. A lot of players have left the Seahawks and they say things like this, and more often than not, it isn't greener. And that's not to say the Seahawks are flawless or faultless or perfect or anything. They're clearly not. But if we were not Seahawks fans and we followed, pick any franchise you want to, we'd have our own quibbles and concerns about every other franchise. Like there's no flawless franchise. Maybe the Commanders' new ownership will go on and prove to be it. But for most of the other teams, there are issues everywhere, including, in particular, with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, all power to him. But when I hear things like him talking about, oh, good old Geno Smith, and me and Geno did this, and me and Geno did that, as I wrote on the blog before he got traded, he and Geno Smith did not see eye to eye. They didn't. I'm not saying they had a bad relationship or a terrible relationship or anything like that, but they butted heads. And there was not a perfect relationship between the two of them. I know that. So for him to come out and start waxing lyrical about he and Gino's relationship in some kind of context of, I don't know, having a dig at somebody else, I thought, pull the other one, man. Like, what are you talking about here? And if he's going to start talking about stuff like that, I ain't having any of the other stuff, quite frankly. What is believable from it all? So I think less of this, more of this, DK, because you think about him is, right, if he'd have just signed a new contract, yeah, the people have been talking about the salary that he's got and that he needs to deliver it, he needs to do this. Well, it's now Pittsburgh's problem. They now get to have the conversation about, can he take the next step in his career at this age? Can he actually justify the massive contract? That's something for the Steelers to worry about. And what DK Metcalf needs to realize, there's a whole bunch of people in Seattle who like DK Metcalf, who would have given him the benefit of the doubt when some of the tougher times. When he gives a 15-yard penalty away, there will always be people going, oh, here we go again. But there'll always be a bunch of people going, yeah, but come on, it's DK, he's doing it less these days, whatever. He ain't going to get the benefit of the doubt in Pittsburgh. If he gives a stupid 15-yard penalty away in week 2 and they lose to the Ravens, they're going to kick off. And they're going to say, why have we traded for this guy? And if he has a 950-yard, 4-touchdown season next year, people are going to be kicking off again in Pittsburgh. So he's going into an environment where already the pressure is on. So like I say, less of this, few more catches and getting your head down, DK, unless he's just not bothered, Adam, because he's been guaranteed a huge salary now. And part of me wonders if when you get that kind of money, do you even give a toss?
Yeah, I think that's well put. The thing that struck me the most is how affiliate, like obviously we knew that Pete Carroll's a huge figure, and he casts an enormous shadow across the whole franchise, but the adoration they have for him, I found, or how much it clearly was his team, and the passing of the baton onto Mike McDonald is just not anywhere near a seemingly an easy process as you would think. One coach to another, it happens. We all thought the writing was on the wall with Pete Carroll. Maybe life was so good playing under him that they didn't want him to leave. From a selfish perspective, I see it with my soccer team right now that we've got an absolute bum of a manager, but the players seem to love it because it feels like a fairly easy life. Maybe there's a bit of that, but for a team that preaches their desperation to win all the time, having gone through relative winning doldrums in the last 4 or 5 years, it did strike me as quite intense how sort of Pete's legacy was going to live on regardless. And I feel like maybe I was harsher on McDonald or maybe not effusive enough in my praise of him for the job that he's done in taking the mantle from, and it's not often that the guy that replaces the guy does pretty well. And maybe McDonald deserves more praise than he got from me last season for the job that he did.
No, I think definitely there's an element of that now, like looking back with hindsight, that getting to 10 wins with this going on is difficult. It really pissed me off when people started talking about, it was just mentioned a few times actually. Hey, Geno Smith was, he had that injury and he missed 4 days of camp. Well, that was because he wanted to make a power play to show the Seahawks that he, what they'd have without him and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, my word, that is so bloody selfish. That is, and also that's not the way to go and get a big contract. The way to get a big contract is to sort of be there to show that you are the guy, and you are very mature about this, and that you signed this contract. So there's no reason why the Seahawks should rip up their plan to what they do with everybody else to wait to the final year to negotiate a new deal, and then you don't throw. What was it, 15 interceptions and 17 touchdowns in 16 games, and then get to play the Rams backups to boost your numbers a bit in the final week? Like that to me, I think really that's a challenge for a head coach. If your quarterback is thinking, I want to be paid, and that's my kind of mindset, and it's maybe driven by the statistics to get the accelerators in the contract, and for that to be the sort of the main priority, or at least a level priority with team success. And with DK Metcalf, all of this talk that he's doing now, and he's breaking down. Why I shouted at the offensive coordinator that day to stop calling the wrong plays. Look, we all know Ryan Grubb was out of his depth, and he lost his job, but he got fired. Like the Seahawks have rectified that, DK. So you talking about it now, they changed that. They understood that. They understood that he wasn't right, and they've moved on. So why are you ranting and raving about it now on the podcast, saying that this needed? For me, it was just none of it needed to be said. I don't know how much of it was nonsense, and it was just him spouting off and trying to make himself seem good on the way out. I think some people have been saying in the comments, DK who, and I'm kind of with them on that. And I'll tell you now, Adam, I just don't think he's going to be amazing at Pittsburgh. I don't see him. His best bet was to go somewhere with a proven quarterback like the Chiefs, where success is almost guaranteed. And Frank Clark, when he was dealt, he had that fortune of going there and having the success and being able to play the big playoffs games where he can make all his sacks. Now everyone's going to look at DK and go, yeah, you've got to make Aaron Rodgers look good, mate. So, I mean, do you see that? Do you see Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf leading the Steelers to a Super Bowl? I don't see them leading them to a playoff victory. This might be the year where they have a losing season for all I care. The defense is getting old.
Yeah, I can't believe a franchise of the stature of the Steelers is flashing some leg at Aaron Rodgers of all people. I think I was talking to Jeff in the week that, yeah, this isn't a 41-year-old Tom Brady that's on the trade block or that's available to pick up, where you can cut, the Tampa Super Bowl that they've got will be as forgettable in 10 years' time as any, because it was such a sort of gun for hire kind of thing. But at least that was Tom Brady, who was, proved that he was still the best of the best. Rodgers is washed. He couldn't throw against Seattle for the Jets. He murdered the Seahawks secondary with his eyes, and he had so many guys wide open. Couldn't make any throws. I know he improved a bit down the stretch of the season, but I would eat this hat if he could take any team, Steelers, to the Super Bowl. I just don't see why a franchise of that stature is sort of almost debasing themselves by being involved in the rumors. And a few of the Pittsburgh Steelers fans that I know and speak to, they don't even want him. And they appear to be spurning, like they appear to be okay with the opportunity to not be quite as good, to not have to deal with it. And I can quite empathize with that.
It just makes you wonder whether they've got some kind of like gentleman's agreement. Well, let's see what happens in the draft. And then maybe after that, if we've not drafted somebody, you can come in as a kind of worst case scenario. But I'd almost be tempted to say, okay, so let's say you don't get Jackson Dart. Well, then take Tyler Shook. And if you don't get Tyler Shook, well, then, I don't know, draft Will Howard in round 3. Like there's just, there are better options out there. So we'll see. But I just think, I think this is a good place to end. Martin has put this, and I agree. As far as I'm concerned, the DK interview is a player indulging in self-serving nonsense and best ignored. I kind of agree. I think we'll leave it there, Martin, on that comment. And thank you for everybody for watching. Thank you for everybody who sent in a super chat. Really appreciate those. Had really good numbers for a 2-hour stream about a mock draft. So thank you to all that. Thank you to everybody who gave it a C+ grade for the realistic mock draft. Appreciate all of that. SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis in the week. We are a month away from the draft now, so things motoring along. So make sure you check out the blog. Do us a favor. Just do me the favor of subscribing to the channel. Just go on, hit the subscribe button. We're getting close to 9,000 subs now. I want to try and get up towards 10 by the draft, and I believe we can do it. I believe we can get almost like a red zone touchdown for the Seahawks. We can get over that line, and we, with an improved offensive line, and get up to 10,000. So if you've not subscribed, please do it. Hit the like button because that helps. Leave a comment in the comment section as well if you can, because that helps too. Adam, massively appreciate your time today, and thank you to everybody else as well. Adam, do you want to say anything to finish?
No, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me. And yeah, loved it. Good fun.
Yeah, great to have you with us. And thank you to everybody who's watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next time.